most important piece of this plan wasn't the city centre, it was the housing of the people.
For me, having a home is a fundamental element of what makes a good place. But if we're not building enough homes to meet needs, then we're not addressing one of the, I think, fundamental tenets of what makes a society function.
Housing has been built, but if there's 11,000 people on the waiting list, and this is families that don't have an adequate place to live, then there's something going wrong somewhere. And I don't know the answer to that.
I've worked in Plymouth for 10 years now, and regeneration, I think, has been a constant theme.
We have this aspiration in this country about owning our own property of whatever size or form it may take. It's all part of getting on that rung of the ladder. It's all part of improving your own individual lifestyle, and it's hopefully meeting people's aspirations, and we should encourage people to be able to live up to those aspirations and move forward in life and move up in life.
Maggie Thatcher turned around and said everybody should have their own house.
I've never wanted my own house. I'm quite happy to rent. You pay your rent, you've got a roof over your head, you just maintain the inside and you've got no worry of the outside. I mean, everybody to their own. I mean, my husband and I and my niece, we're the only two in all of our family that's rented property. All the rest of them, they all got their own houses.
We've downsized all along from a 3-bedroom to a 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom flat.
And another thing,
now, if we had our own house, nobody would be able to do that.
Even the government, you say people need to move out to go into smaller places. They want to move, but there's nothing for them to move into.
Well, there's a housing crisis nationally, and Plymouth is no exception to that. We do have an obligation to put the housing supply and increasing that wherever possible very high up on our priorities of decision making. Sometimes that has a clash with what local people think. When certainly larger housing developments are proposed, there'll always be some people who don't want it next door to them. But part of our job is to balance that alongside the needs of what's proposed, and that's the tricky minefield to get through. We do have a policy to insist on at least 30% affordable housing. Some developers do try and minimise it as much as possible. That's the game they're in, and nobody objects to that. So we need to make sure that we're sticking to that target, and the figures show that we're quite ahead of it at the moment.
They've got to think of the families that their parents don't work. They've got to think that they're in care. They've got to think of all them, but at the end of the day, all they want to do are money-grabbing people.
I think at the moment we're rather stuck with one model of housing delivery, which is relying upon private house builders and seeking then to get private house builders to contribute affordable housing. You know, we've got in this country decades of underperformance in terms of delivery of new housing. Relying solely upon the private house builders, and increasingly a small number of private house builders as the means by which the nation houses itself, is rather a weakness.
I'm of the view that council housing should be under the control of the local authority. The government should be collecting taxes and building houses, because when we come into the world, we're all the same. And why should capital dictate what people have and what people don't have, especially in the form of having somewhere to live, its well-being?
What we're not going to see, the big council house building programmes of 60 years ago. Sadly, from some people's point of view, times have moved on, and that's not what we've got.
We as a city council took the decision that we weren't going to have a housing stock, and if we decided that we didn't want to manage homes, why would we necessarily want to build homes when ultimately the skills of the council are not that well resourced in the skill of building houses? So I'm not sure that we'd be in a position as a council necessarily to want to go back to actually physically building the houses.
The city of the future should make it easy for people to get together. If we start planning for community life, it won't be easy to rear a docile people which takes its ideas from the radio and the newspapers.
Don't know what he's talking about.
A standard of living with spaciousness and beauty for all.
Housing is more than just the four walls and the door of a property. It is about the overall living environment. And so I think having social housing providers thinking about how the neighbourhood is performing and how they manage the neighbourhood, as well as simply the homes, I think it is an important priority.
Yeah, we certainly do have a different social purpose to private developers. All housing associations will reinvest their surpluses, their profits, if you like, back into the organisation. That reinvestment is very much focused on building more homes. Housing associations are both, in a sense, competitors to private developers and also partners to private developers. But I can see more housing associations in the future, going it alone without the private developer.
And we tried to make each area and a neighbourhood of about 10,000, and I'd hoped that these neighbourhoods would become communities. You see, when these estates were created, you had completely new families into them, and it takes a long time to coalesce into a unit.
Reading through the original plan for Plymouth, they were particularly concerned with creating neighbourhoods that would be sustainable and socially efficient, I think are the words that are used in the plan for Plymouth. So it was about creating places where groups of people could live together in harmony with all the services and facilities that they would need in one place. They've thought very carefully about the size that those neighbourhoods should be. Too large was obviously going to be not kind of social and friendly enough. Too small could potentially be too contained and overcrowded. So there was this kind of optimum size of population of between 6,000 and 10,000 people. The principles of planning those neighbourhoods was very much around that size of neighbourhood, how to get those people meeting in central places through shops and churches.
We're seeing amazing changes taking place in communities like Devonport, where new housing is being provided and changing in many ways the character of that community. I think for the good in the long run.
If you travel over the Stonehouse Bridge, you come into Devonport, and on that left-hand side, it takes you down to Richmond Walk. Then you come a little bit further, you've got that first development there, which is Mount Wise. And then you come to the roundabout and you look at the vista sort of at Kerr Street, which is what was the post-war development. And then you look at what was the South Yard. It's kind of the Red Rover Vision development. And you carry on further through Devonport, you go up towards Granby Island and Granby Green, that's Abercrombie and Watson, and that is now being demolished as well. And it's quite interesting to see the development. I mean, there is some of the original Victorian architecture left, but very little of the post-war regeneration. But I think to kind of lose that kind of sense of, that little sense of identity that forms part of the history in the community, I think to lose that is, for me anyways, it's quite sad, I think.
I don't mind it, it's just like, it's like completely different from when I was younger. I had loads of memories, and now, like, because of rebuilding it, it's just taking all the memories that we had up there. Some houses are quite expensive, especially the one that we live in. We pay loads of money a month just to live there. It's worth it because it's bigger spaces in the house. So you got more floors for bedrooms and storage and stuff. But it's just quite expensive.
I've lived in Devonport nearly all my life. It was a really nice area, and obviously they've changed it to make it better. Obviously, you need new houses. They always all falling apart. I don't know how much Rad Row houses are, but looking at their standards now, they're bound to be expensive because they've done them posh. So obviously the only people that can live there is posh people.
We need to make sure that our communities are as mixed and sustainable as possible. I think to actually have a part of the community being a little bit more affluent, having a lot more inward investment in, gives everybody a lift. What I don't want to do is to go back to the situation we saw back in the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s, where Devonport was very much the poor relation. Oh, it's a problem, we'll stick it in Devonport. That does nothing for social cohesion and building Plymouth as a mixed society.
It might be a good thing that there's might be posh people around here, but at the end of the day, you're not gonna if they do come up, and if it does split into two, you get the upper class and the lower class, they're gonna split the whole community in half. They do not talk to young people enough. It's Devonport's the home of Plymouth. How do I feel about it changing? It shouldn't change. At the end of the day, it feels like I'm losing my hometown.
There's going to be lots of trees and green and pots, and it's going to be the most beautiful city in the world.
Will there be sandpits?
Yes, there'll be lots of sandpits and heaps of swimming pools.
Will there be average shelters?
No, we've seen the last of them, thank goodness.
I was brought to Whitley with the family in 1950. 4 of us in the family at that stage, and we moved to a Cornish unit in Bodmin Road. We had central heating, we had 4 bedrooms. I had my own bedroom when I was 5, 6 years old, which was lovely. There was no school there at the time. We had no church. The shops were just starting to be built. There was a lot of open playing fields, a lot of places that you could actually go. We used to make dens down by the stream. So Whitley was a really nice, safe place to live. The view at the time was Whitley was built for children to always have somewhere to play. So I'm concerned that some of the green spaces around Whitley particularly will be snapped up and sold.
Started to come together because of green spaces, really, didn't you? So, and you're going to keep with the Keep Whitley Green sort of emphasis, which is really good. So hopefully we'll just get more people involved.
I guess for me, I'm kind of really interested in what motivated you to want to come and form a group to say Keep Whitley Green, and what your aspiration might be as well. Sort of thinking about, because the Plymouth Plan is about creating a vision over the next 20 years. So how might you see the green space, if you like, as well, in your neighbourhood being utilised over the next 20 years?
Yeah, okay, I understand. The reason for me is I come from the southeast, and it just went mental 30 years ago. The tiniest plot of land that was built on, 1 house knocked down, 6 put in its place, infilling everywhere, and it just destroyed the village, town, whatever we want to call it, where I grew up in. And we've only been here, 5 years now, isn't it? This one.
Whitley, yeah.
Yeah, 5 years in Whitley. And it's beautiful. I mean, I'm not denying there's a need for housing. But there's plenty of places where you can build. And I think it would be proportionally unfair, that sounds good, doesn't it, to build on the green spaces that we've got, just for the sake of ease, maybe? Because it's a damn sight cheaper to build on a bit of grass than it is to build on somewhere that's already got a building on it, isn't it?
I understand there is a shortage of housing. I don't think that there is a problem in Whitley. I always thought we had enough. But as it turns out, no, we haven't got enough. So they're starting to do the build now, I understand, at Taunton Avenue. And I know the brownfield area down at the bottom of Bodmin Road is going up for housing as well. So there's obviously got to be an issue, isn't there, that we need housings, not just in Whitley, is it? Every single estate that there is. So if there's going to be a green area large enough to build on for the Plymouth City Council to sell off, obviously it's going to be for housing. It's just happening without us even realising, if you see what I'm saying. So surely at some point, somewhere, they're going to have to build another doctor's surgery. And how much more of the school space is there? Are they going to have to build further on to the schools to be able to provide all these houses that are coming in?
I think Plymouth is one of the greenest cities in the country. It has a huge amount of green space. That's fantastic. I don't think anyone wants to see, a lot of that built over, but there are areas of the city where there are, sites which can accommodate maybe 10, 15 homes, 20 homes. There is a huge demand and people need homes in the city. And I think when you engage in those communities in the right way and explain that, it's far easier then when it comes to the more difficult discussions around developing on green space, for you to have those discussions and for you to be able to, I think, to get certainly the majority of the community on your side.
Lots of residents oppose residential developments in their area because they're concerned, quite rightly, about a standard design that is imposed on their community. They're concerned about lack of infrastructure, whether that be community facilities or roads and access, and they're concerned about what they see the planning system deliver in the past, which is some of that infrastructure not being put in place. So these are legitimate concerns that have to be addressed. It's not just about building buildings, it's about creating sustainable places.
None of us know areas better than the ones we live and work in, so the impacts of development are going to be better known by those that are going to be affected. And I just think that the community and democracy at the lowest level ultimately actually delivers better and more efficient government than top-down imposition of policy and decisions on the wider public.
People are up in London, MPs, we'll do this. They don't come down to the ground roots and find out what's happening. What have we got coming down to Plymouth? Nothing. Why don't they help the councils?
As a nation, we haven't provided enough housing, and we're not going to provide that housing without there being some impact upon existing residents and so on. But we have to do that, and if planning isn't trying to address that issue, then it's failing.
Yeah, I'm really optimistic actually that in 10 years' time there will be a lot of more new housing in the city, but it will be really good quality housing, and it will be very popular housing as well.
I mean, if people were looking back in 50 years' time, I'd like to think that they felt that we had some sense of vision and boldness in the way that we planned the city. I'd hope they recognise that maybe we were at the cusp of a change in how planning is delivered and how local people in the future have a greater influence over the planning of their cities.
Yeah, you might have a lot of changes in life, but you should do them in a way that young people understand why they're doing it, not just, oh, we're pulling down the houses to make new room for new people.
Any housing to accommodate people that have nowhere to live is a good thing. It's just where it's built. To find a piece of land just because it looks like it's just about the right size to build a house on it, it's not the way to go.
People need to know, don't they? And they need to have a voice of opinion on that sort of thing. So, and we can't all say no. We've got to say yes somewhere, haven't we?
We've heard all what they're going to do. I'd like to see it start happening. When I see it happen, I'll believe it.
I mean, I kind of think that everybody deserves somewhere decent to live. Nobody should be homeless. Nobody should be living in temporary bed and breakfast accommodation. There should be a decent home there for you.
But aren't you interested in your own city? Don't you understand? They means you.
there is no vision, the people perish.
Seize the opportunity.